All right, we are back on. Defendants are present, represented by counsel. Didn't you get my mic on yet?
Sorry,
All right. Mr. Goff.
Your Honor, after pondering over the lunch, talking with my client, conferring with esteemed co-counsel, and with all due respect to them, on behalf of Mr. Bryan, I am moving for a mistrial at this time based upon the question posited to the witness in the presence of the jury in this case. I'm not going to belabor the comment itself. I'm not going to belabor the comment itself. I think co-counsel have already addressed that, and the state has already provided their explanation for it. But I think the best way I could characterize it, the question would be the way another argument in this case was characterized as being reprehensible. Not the person, but the statement. We're asking for a mistrial at this point because we just don't see any way that that issue can be cured. And part of the reason I say that, Your Honor, is, it just brings all kinds of different problem issues in this case all together in a way that creates a puzzle. And I don't see, with all due respect to the McMichael defendant's counsel, I don't see how we unring the bell, how the jurors unhear what they heard, and I don't know how the court cures it without bringing more attention to other issues. I mean, I thought the state was all concerned about talking about punishment and penalties and stuff. I thought this was an issue we discussed before trial, and I don't know how the court addresses this to the jury without bringing attention to punishment issues in the case. It's just unfortunate, and obviously it was arguably intentional in the question itself. It wasn't, we've already heard a statement, it was not an accident, it wasn't a misspeak of words, it was intentional. And we think that a mistrial is the only remedy under the circumstances.
From the other defendants on the motion.
We are waiting to see what you do about our motion to admonish and a curative instruction.
I agree with Ms. Hogue.
From the state.
We leave it to the discretion of the court.
All right. The court indicated that I'd take the lunch break to think through exactly what to do. The court does find that the question that was presented was inflammatory and irrelevant and completely unnecessary, particularly given the witness that was on the stand. It has potentially injected into this case issues not appropriate for the jury and which were in fact discussed and brought up pre-trial. Counsel should have either known or should have known that this was a question that should not have been asked, and therefore counsel is admonished by the court and is instructed not to repeat such actions subject to the contempt powers of the court. The court does in fact, or will, instruct the jury that the state has been admonished based on the question. I'm not going to repeat the question. And I'm going to instruct them to disregard the question asked and any implications arising therefrom. That is the intent of the court. The motion for mistrial is going to be denied, with the court finding that the admonishment is the appropriate remedy and the instruction to the panel addresses the matter presented.
And just for the record, Your Honor, the court's going to do this in front of the jury, and I just don't want to be perceived as having waived by failing to accept. I'm just putting on the record that we do not believe the curative instruction will be sufficient. If the court wants me to come back up and say that again after the court actually does it, I can do that, but in the interest of efficiency, I'm just asking if the court will recognize this, preserve the motion for mistrial, notwithstanding the curative instruction, or does the court want me to get up again and renew it after the curative instruction?
As far as the court is concerned, the court's ruled on the mistrial, and I have, pulled the motions together. I am providing, I've admonished the state, indicated the court's position with regard to the question, indicated that the contempt powers of the court would be the next remedy available if such action was taken, and I will indicate to the panel that the state has been admonished as such and instruct them to disregard the question. So that addresses both the motion from the McMichaels as well as with the court denying the motion for mistrial will instead be providing the instruction that I have just indicated.
Thank you.
Anything from the state before we continue? Actually, it's the defendant's case, Chief. Anything from McMichaels before we continue?
We're ready, but I think Greg might.
Yes, Your Honor. On behalf of the McMichaels, I'd like the court to either revisit or think outside the presence of the jury about a ruling on an objection made earlier concerning the use of Facebook posts with defense witnesses. The Facebook page that is informing the residents of Satilla Shores, including Travis McMichael, is relevant in this situation. And here is how. We didn't have the opportunity to argue this for Your Honor. Travis McMichael took the stand. He testified that he was informed by a number of sources about crime in the neighborhood, and that one of those sources was the Satilla Shores Facebook page. The Satilla Shores Facebook page is something that the state had acquired early on and had been provided to us in discovery. The Satilla Shores Facebook page has been something that was used on cross-examination of Travis McMichael, and the question before the jury as to whether or not this neighborhood had been experiencing an uptick in crime is relevant to the issues the jury will have to resolve, because it goes to one of those factors concerning the totality of the circumstances. What did Travis and Greg know at the time they made the decision to do the things they did, to choose to be proactive instead of, as the state has asked Mr. McMichael on the stand, just choosing to stay home or call 911. Additionally, the state has continued to argue through evidence and GCPD and GBI agents that it really wasn't all that bad out there. So, Your Honor, prohibiting the defense from questioning Satilla Shore residents who were involved in posting or reading Facebook posts on the Satilla Shores Facebook page, and who will testify that what they saw and either posted and read informed some of the choices and decisions they made about their own liberty and their freedom and their safety and security, is a relevant inquiry for this court now that we know and have had a witness to say that Travis McMichael saw the page, that his mother would see the page and would talk to him and his father about it. For that reason, it would be just like excluding any questioning of a witness about something she read in the Brunswick News. The Brunswick News says, hey, a serial killer has just escaped from the Brunswick jail, the Glynn County jail. Everyone lock your doors. Well, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but it sure does inform the decisions they make and the thought process that they have. For that reason, Your Honor, so long as the proper foundation is laid, the defense contends that we ought to be able to question and allow our defense witnesses to testify about things they saw, things they posted on Satilla Shore Facebook page, and how those things they saw and posted informed their decision making.
Anything from the state?
Yes, Judge. First off, Travis McMichael was shown Facebook posts that he made and that he responded to and that he commented on. So that doesn't really go to that argument. The problem here is, how is it connected to Travis McMichael? Travis McMichael testified appropriately that I looked at Facebook and I thought there was an uptick in crime. That's his perception, that's his opinion, and that's before the jury. So that's fine. But putting Miss Lindy Kofer up, which they just did, who said, I've never been the victim of a crime, and yes, I would repost other people's things on Facebook, there's been no causal link between what she did and her Facebook postings and Travis McMichael. There's been absolutely nothing that connects the two of them that makes it relevant. and her perception and opinion. Now, if she had taken the stand and said, yes, I saw a Facebook post and I went out and put up cameras, or I was the victim of a crime and put up cameras in the neighborhood, as we assume some of the witnesses are going to testify to, yes, that's what that person did. But to solely go, I read Jenny's Facebook post and Stevie's Facebook post and this other person's Facebook, and this is what they said, well, that's hearsay. And that's basically not admissible evidence at that point. So I'm not sure what the defense is asking for these witnesses to do. I think at this point the suggestion is we see if it's hearsay. We see if what the person's talking about is their personal Facebook post, or is this something they read? Because we're going to bring in every single Brunswick newspaper and show it for all of 2019 and 2020 to inform these people. They all read the newspaper. Maybe they watched the nightly news. How does that connect up to whether it's more likely or less likely that the defendants committed the crime? So we ask it to be more on a play-by-play basis, because I think that's the appropriate way to approach this.
Agree with that, except let's see if we can all agree on the definition of hearsay. Hearsay is not a Facebook post if it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but instead to inform an individual who has read it or posted it, and who will do, just as you said, Ms. Donikoski, will testify about how that affected one's perception of their neighborhood and may have caused them to take certain additional safety measures or constrain their own liberty as a result of what they've read.
Yeah,
Your facial expression makes me think that we're not on the same page.
No,
about
I'm
hearsay.
trying to figure out how to explain where I am on it. The objection that was made during the last witness, the court sustained the objection and actually explained the ruling. She was asked generally about, I didn't write it down, but generally about Facebook posts and what her thoughts were. But my ruling, I indicated that I think it was a relevance objection, was not relevant to the defendants and what they may have known, and none of that got linked up. So for that particular objection, if I remember correctly, that was the basis for it. The challenge with the Facebook posts is it's social media. I'm not sure exactly what the basis of it is. There are some issues that are out there, so the court has some concerns about a bunch of Facebook posts being the basis for anything. But more importantly, what we're here about is what the defendants think was going on, as opposed to in the last, with the last particular witness, what a resident of 30 years may have seen and how she reacted to it. The court has some concerns about the relevance of that evidence, and I'll rule on it accordingly. But just putting up individuals that live in the neighborhood to say, I looked at Facebook and this is the way I felt, I think that there's the basis for some objection there, and I'll go ahead and take that as they come. But if it can be linked up with what's actually before the court, so be it. But just bringing witnesses in to say they looked at Facebook and unrelated to, in fact, she testified, I think she didn't know the defendants. Yeah.
And I'll just say this last piece, Your Honor, to fill in that one gap. We will link this up. And I think it's important for the court to be reminded that during the cross-examination of Travis McMichael and other direct examinations of GCPD and GBI agents, the argument has repeatedly been made by the state that the defendants are exaggerating the feelings of that neighborhood and what was really going on in that neighborhood. So I think the only way to respond to that, if I'm acting on behalf of myself and my neighbor, then it's fair enough for me to say, well, let me tell you what my neighbor was worried about. Here's what she told me. Here's what she experienced. And that may help the jury think more clearly about the way that the state is characterizing a peaceful, calm, placid Satilla Shores in February of 2020.
I just want to add, I'm sorry. I just want to add, I think Ms. Hogue addressed it, but several witnesses have testified that there were maybe 2 burglary 911 calls or 2 entering auto 911 calls, 1 burglary call for this long period of time. That testimony was elicited by the state. The only way to respond to that, there was more crime in the neighborhood, is from people who experienced it and read about it and were concerned about it. And that's the relevance of the Facebook page, because Travis McMichael testified on direct.
Well, let me just, I guess, as I said, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm going to do that anyway. Yeah, I mean, if you got a witness that stands up and testifies that they were the victim of a crime in Satilla Shores, sure. But if you got a witness that gets up and says, oh yeah, I lived in Satilla Shores and I looked at a Facebook page and I used that to inform myself about crime in the neighborhood, but I've never spoken to the defendants, which is exactly what we had with the last witness, that's an objection that's going to be sustained. Those are two very different things. Okay. All right.
I mean, we believe, because of Travis McMichael's use of the neighborhood Facebook page, as a source of information that raised concerns that he testified about.
Well, and he testified, and on direct could have walked all the way through that. So and I believe he testified to what he was informed of in the neighborhood, and Facebook was referenced during his direct examination.
Correct. And this corroborates that there were, in fact, Facebook posts about crime in the neighborhood.
But it went I'm not going to debate it further. The question that went beyond that into what the Facebook posts were, and so again, the objection was sustained with the last witness. I've explained where the court generally is on this, and we'll proceed from there. All right, we're going to bring the panel in. I'm going to provide the instruction to the panel, and is Travis McMichael ready with his next witness?
Next
Or
witness
his next
is
witness.
Cindy Clark.
For the record, on the recess for lunch, we had an individual out in the foyer of the courthouse wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. Bringing to the court's attention, for the record.
Okay. All right, let's go get the panel.
adjourned. Seated.
All right, welcome back. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their lunch. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, an improper question was asked of the last witness that the state knew or should have known was objectionable. Accordingly, the court has admonished the state and has ordered that the actions are not to be repeated. You are instructed to disregard the last question asked and any implications arising therefrom. With that instruction to the panel, is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Call Cindy Clark.
Just raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Go ahead and proceed.
After Ms. Clark,
Hey.
I just have a few brief questions for you.
Okay.
If you would just say and spell your name, please.
My name is Cindy Clark, CINDY CLARK.
Thank you. And where do you live?
I live in Brunswick on Holmes Road.
Is that in the Satilla Shores neighborhood?
Yes,
Okay. Are you married?
yes,
Children?
yes.
And the type of work you do?
In sales.
Okay. At any point in time as you were living in Satilla Shores, did you become aware of crime happening in the neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay. Generally speaking, what type of crime were you aware that was happening in the neighborhood?
Petty crime, cars being broken into, things like that.
Okay. Were you aware whether guns had been stolen from cars in the neighborhood?
Yes,
Or were you aware of whether people were seen or spotted walking around the neighborhood at night?
yes.
Okay. You'd have to speak up just a little
Okay.
bit. Okay. At any point in time, did you undertake any precautions about your home, like putting up cameras or doorbell cameras or things like that?
I did put up a doorbell camera, but I never hooked it up.
Oh.
It was a waste. But yes, we took precautions. We locked our doors and we locked our cars at night.
When you say we, who are you speaking of?
My husband and I.
Okay. Did you discuss this with any of the neighbors about how you felt or thought about these things that were happening in the neighborhood?
Sure.
Can you give us a time period of when this crime was happening? Was it 2018, 19? I'll just drop off the end part of that question. Can you give us a time period of when this was happening?
We moved in the neighborhood 2004, so probably 2006 on. I mean, you know, just things happening here and there.
Okay. Do you have a general concern that as a neighbor it's a good thing to look out for one another?
Yes.
Is that something that you try to do?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you ever become aware of the Satilla Shores Facebook page?
Yes.
How did you become aware of it?
Well, I'm a member of I'm on there too, so I forgot how I heard about it.
Okay.
But I joined it.
All right. Have you yourself ever posted on the Facebook page?
Yes.
Did you at any time ever use the Facebook page to inform yourself about crime going on in Satilla Shores?
I think I remember once, maybe twice, yes.
Meaning that you only read it once or twice, or that you posted on it once or
Oh,
twice?
that I posted something once or twice.
Okay.
But I read it more than once.
Okay.
I read it a lot.
And did you read it as it was relating to trying to understand what type of crime may be happening?
Leading.
Again, it's not reading. I'll give you a case on it, Your Honor. Miller versus the State, 258 Georgia Act 425. May I approach? Yes. Mark the last paragraph for the court, asking a question that contains the possibility of
Objection to
I'll read it.
I was just making a record for the court. That's fine.
It restates what a leading question is.
I know. I'm just giving it so the court understands that asking the witness a question that contains the possibility of a yes or no answer is not a leading question.
to counsel testifying and counsel doing all of this with a speaking objection.
I was just responding to the objection.
Okay. This is,
Helpful?
well, no. It states what a leading question is. If it
Right.
suggests the answer, then it's leading.
Right.
A leading question can still be phrased as a yes or no, as if it leads to one and only one of those answers as a conclusion. It is still leading.
I would say it's
So-
subject driven, but I understand the court's ruling. I'll move on.
Yeah, so let's go on. It's
Okay.
sustained.
All right. Did you yourself witness any type of crime happening in the neighborhood? Or become aware of it in your own space in the neighborhood?
I didn't witness it.
Did you witness any aftermath of it or anything suspicious at any time?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is?
The neighbor across the street, I guess they were in the middle of going through their car. And
Who's they?
Okay. It was two guys that were in a car that had parked across the street from my home. And I guess they scared them, and the one guy drove off and left the other guy in the neighborhood. And that was around like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so we all woke up, they woke us up. So I was aware of that.
Okay. Is this the kind of thing that you would post for the benefit of other neighbors?
I don't think I posted anything about that. There was another incident that I posted about because I saw some people in the neighborhood. A car broke down, people walking into the neighborhood, and I did post about that, but I had called 911.
And why did you post about that particular incident?
Well, they were walking into the neighborhood away from their vehicle instead of walking out of the neighborhood maybe to get help or something, but it turned out to be a stolen vehicle, so
Okay. Are you yourself a gun owner?
yes.
If you could just give me one moment. Your Honor, one moment, please. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Okay.
But you'll just have to wait 1 second. The state might have questions.
Hi, Ms. Clark. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I'm Linda Dunikoski. I'm one of the prosecutors, okay?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. So, this incident with the two guys across from your home in the middle of the night, when did that happen?
I can't remember the year.
Well, let me ask you this. Was it before COVID?
Yes.
Okay. So if we do that, was it like the 2019, 2018, or even further back?
I think it was further back.
Further back. And then when we talk about that car that was broken down, was that the car from Florida that was stolen? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that was, what year? Do you remember when that was?
I'm going to guess.
Okay.
maybe 2016, something like that.
All right. And do you know Greg McMichael or Travis McMichael?
I don't.
Okay. Do you know Mr. William Roddy Bryan?
I've met him one time. hmm
All right. Thank you very much.
Any regret?
Speaking about dates, do you recall in December of 2019 learning about a suspicious car coming in the neighborhood and you saying that you would go back and get the tag number of
Yes.
the car? Is that kind of the way you're talking about trying to help neighbors?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall around August of 2019 sharing some suspicions about an individual who was taking pictures and walking around the neighborhood taking pictures and that someone should run his license plate too? Can't remember that one?
I can't remember that.
If
I
I sh-
didn't remember that one.
Okay, may I approach the witness? See if this refreshes your memory. You're welcome to step forward. Just see if that refreshes your memory about
Yes.
generally saying in August of 19 about another car coming in, maybe
Yes.
running the license plate.
Yes.
Again, is that something that you were doing to try to be a helpful neighbor? Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
You should be released. Be released, John. And you are released. Thank you.
Next call is Brooke Perez.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and see.
And I know you're soft-spoken, so please use that microphone next to you.
Yes, sir.
Would you introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Brooke Perez.
And how do you spell your first and last name?
Brooke.
A little bit louder, okay? Because I'm even having trouble here. Okay. And Ms. Perez, where do you live?
Satilla Shores.
How long have you lived at Satilla Shores?
The end of this month will be 6 years.
6 years. You moved in 2015 or so?
Yes.
Okay. And are you married?
Yes.
What's the name of your husband?
Diego Perez.
Okay. And do you have any children?
Yes, 3.
And what are their ages? You don't
13,
mind.
8, and 15 months.
13, 8, and 15 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you at one point the victim of theft crime?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell the jury what happened and first when that happened?
I don't remember the year that it happened. I knew it was over the summer. Someone in the neighborhood had posted on our neighborhood Facebook page that they had I think their car was broken into. And usually when that would happen, I would go out and check just to make sure. And sure enough, I went out and some tools were missing from my husband's truck. It was a Makita drill and impact dropper, charger, and 2 batteries in a case.
You said you don't remember the year. Would looking at your Facebook post about that refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes. Ms. Perez, if you'll turn at the top, there's page numbers. If you'll turn to page 430 and read through that, see if that refreshes your memory about the year in which that occurred.
Yes, sir. It's 2019, June 30th of 2019.
Is that the date you remember it happening?
I knew it was in the summertime, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know what time of day or night the tools, or approximately the tools, were stolen?
I would assume overnight, because Diego always backed in front of the garage. And I know this was in the morning. Well, it says 11:51. I say morning. But I remember seeing it, early that morning, and I was like, oh, let me go out and check. And when I did, I noticed the tools were gone.
Did y'all take any actions as a result of his tools?
Yeah, I called. I think it might have been the non-emergency number, but I did call, and a police officer came out to the house, and we didn't have the serial numbers on there. And he said, I asked him, can you fingerprint the truck, perhaps? And he said no, because of the type of door handle it was, that most likely would not show a print on there.
Okay.
So I said, okay.
Was that the first time since you moved into Satilla Shores in 2015 or so that you and Diego had been the victim of a property crime?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did being victimized make you feel?
It's a very uneasy feeling. At the time, I only had 2 children, but I'm a stay-at-home mom, have been for several years, homeschooled my children. So I'm home by myself with the kids, so it just felt like a violation. Someone in something that, shouldn't be this close to my home.
Okay. Did you and your husband take any actions as a result of but let me back up one second. Did the police ever find the person who took the tools?
No.
Okay. Did you and your husband Diego take any actions as a result of the theft of your tools?
Yes, sir. We purchased a Lorex home security system. It's a 4K ultra high def camera system, so that way, it's really good.
Do you know where?
I'm sorry, I hate to break the flow. It's really hard to hear you. Sorry.
I'm going to stand back here.
Okay, so I can yell at you. Okay.
Yes. And Ms. Teresa, if you don't hear me, let me know. You said you and your husband purchased cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, did you install them or did Diego?
Oh, no, he installed them.
Okay. Do you know where on your house they were installed?
I think the first one we might have put over the garage. The other one is on the second story. And there's one facing the front door. I think at that time we had only done maybe those 3. I don't think we had put any more. We purchased several cameras. But the cordage that they come with, they only come with X amount of feet, and then you have to buy additional cords. I don't really know much about it, but I just know that the ones that we were wanting to put out, the cording wasn't long enough, so he was only able to put up a few at once.
One was, you said above the driveway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have, well, I'll get to that in a second. Did you post about the theft of tools on the neighborhood Facebook page?
Yes, sir, I did.
So when do you recall becoming a member of the neighborhood Facebook page?
The day, or maybe the day after it was created.
Do you know when that was?
I don't.
Okay. Was it prior to 2018, if you know?
It might have been. It may have been. I really don't know.
Well, tell the jury why you posted about a personal theft of you and your husband's tools.
Well, if I was a victim, I'd assume someone else, in the neighborhood was, because that's how I found out I was a victim, was someone had said, someone had entered their car last night, and I said, this needs to stop, or the car's locked, and then come to find out we were, a theft, and apparently his truck wasn't locked. I'm not sure what happened, but just to let them know, hey, something was missing from us, you might want to check too.
Okay, so you were letting your neighbors know about your own theft?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did there come a time when you became the administrator of the neighborhood Facebook page?
Yes, sir.
And why did you become the administrator of the Facebook page?
Because my lovely neighbor made me administrator. I guess because I'm usually home, and I don't say I sit and watch the cameras, but it's a huge 40-something inch screen, and all you have are all these cameras that show, so if there's motion, it'll let you know there's motion, and it'll tell you what camera, and I kind of look to see, what's going on.
Okay. What does being the administrator mean for people who aren't on Facebook?
If you wanted to join the group, we would see who it is, and if they lived in the neighborhood, yes, here you go, and that's.
So the sole criteria of being on the page is you had to live in Satilla Shores.
Yeah, absolutely, or either. I think my mom's on there, and a couple of other, relatives, to look out. So if we were out of town, she would know, hey, there's something going on, they're not home, that kind of thing. But
as the administrator, how often would you look at the neighborhood page?
on Facebook, it'll give you a notification if someone's posted in there, and so I would look at my phone, periodically, and if I saw a notification, I'd go and then go on there and look.
Do you think you looked at it once a day, more than that, or less than that?
When someone posted on there, so sometimes there's more than one post a day, and sometimes, there's, several weeks that there's not a post, so it would just depend on the action.
Please tell us the kinds of things that people use the Facebook page for, the neighborhood Facebook page.
They would use it for if, we had an incident as far as a theft, if suspicious person, if our water went out, if power went out, if police activity in the neighborhood, basically to keep whatever is going on in the neighborhood, to keep our neighbors informed, because a lot of our neighbors are elderly neighbors, and there's several houses that are, I don't want to call them weekend houses, but basically no one lives there full time. They're there maybe a weekend a month or so. So that way everyone kind of knew what was going on. Was it a way of keeping an eye on everybody's property and other things going on, the kids and things like that? Yeah. Okay. Did you keep Diego informed about the things you were seeing, Diego Perez, the things you were seeing on the neighborhood Facebook page? I think I told him about the water a couple times, and I did tell him anytime that there was suspicious activity and anytime something would go missing, I would let him know.
And why would you tell your husband about suspicious activity that you were seeing being posted on Facebook?
Because he's my protector.
Okay, so to keep him informed about the things he needed to know to keep you and the kids safe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know a gentleman by the name of Larry English?
Yes, sir.
How do you know Mr. English?
Our kids, so we bought the fun house in the neighborhood for all the kids to come to and hang out, and he has a young son that's in the same age as my oldest daughter, and the kids across the street, they all would come to our house, and his son Hoyt, he was outside playing, and I said, ask your dad to get your swimsuit and come swim with the kids, and he said, no ma'am, he won't let me, but if you come down there, maybe he'll let me. So we walked down there, and that's how I met Mr. English and introduced myself. Hi, I live right here. Our kids always play outside. If it's okay, can he come and play? And that's how I met him originally.
And how many doors down from you does he live?
2.
And I mean, when I say live, do we understand this to be a house under construction?
Yes, sir. He lives in a camper in the backyard.
Okay. So how often would you know Mr. English to be on his property, approximately?
Still to this day, about every day, every other day. I see him all the time there. And since the house was being worked on, he's there working a lot. So
on the house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did there come a time where you informed Mr. English about you and Diego having your tools missing?
Yes, sir. The day that the cop, came out, the day that our tools went missing, my husband said, there's a gentleman over here building a house. You might want to check with him. And my memory serves me correct, Diego and the police officer walked over there to Mr. English's house, and I think that's the first time that they had met each other.
Is that the first time you met Mr. English?
No, sir. I didn't go over there with the police. I met him, I think it might have been right after that, or maybe it was right before, but it was with the kids playing. Was there ever a time where you became aware of problems Mr. English was having with intruders on his property? Yes, sir. And do you remember when that was? I believe that might have been in October.
What year?
Maybe 2019. And I only know that because a neighbor had phoned and said that someone was on her camera. She wasn't home. And so I woke up my husband, hey, there's someone on the camera, go and check. And I spoke with police that night.
All right, so
and the police officers who told us about that.
All right, let's back that up. So there was a time where you became aware, I think you said October
Yes,
of
sir. I believe it was in October.
Okay. How did you become aware of an intruder on Mr. English's property?
I can't say if I saw on the camera the cops or if it was when Diego was outside the cops, but I know I was alerted due to police presence, and I remember speaking to an officer, and he said that they were looking for a young black male that had been on, and he didn't tell me whose property, but pointed at the house under construction, and that the caller had said he had ran across the street to the house across the street from us.
And you said you got a call from a neighbor that
Yeah.
night while this was supposedly happening. Who was the neighbor?
Miss Lawrence.
Subi Lawrence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and she called you?
Yes, sir.
And do you know, without telling us what she said, do you know why she called? Did she inform you, without saying what she said, of what was going on at her house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned Diego being outside. What did you do after you got a call from Subi Lawrence?
I immediately woke him up and I was like, honey, there's someone on Subi's camera, and he jumped up and busted his tail. We have hardwood floors and he was wearing socks and he slipped and fell and then jumped up and went out, went over, and he never found anyone.
So literally busted his tail.
Yeah, literally
fell on the
busted.
floor.
Yeah.
Did you know if he went over there, when he went over there, he was armed?
Yes, sir.
How do you know that?
My husband's normally armed. He carries every day in his waistband, so.
Has a concealed weapons permit?
Yes, sir, and we have USCCA. So.
Okay. So he went over, to your understanding, to Ms. Lawrence's house
Yes, sir.
to try to help her understand what was happening on
Yeah,
her
she
camera.
wasn't home, and she's a single mom with 3 small children. And when she called and said someone was on her camera, it was like, oh gosh, So I said, don't come home until we make sure everything's okay, because the last thing we wanted was someone to be in her house, and her and the little boys go in, and who knows what would happen.
Did you eventually go outside and I think you said talk to the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was, to your knowledge, anyone found, located, that had been the intruder at Mr. English's property that night?
No, sir.
Did there come a time when you became aware of other nighttime intruders in Mr. English's property?
Yes, sir.
And how did you become aware of that?
Mr. English would text my husband, usually a video, and sometimes he would call and say, how would he say, the colored man's back at my house.
That's what he says?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Or the colored boy is what he would call and tell Diego.
Okay. And why did he call Diego, to your understanding?
I know my husband told him we're 90 feet or 95 feet something. Our house is, it may seem like far, but it's not. And he told him, goodness, because Larry, I think, had sent him some pictures or whatever. And he said, if you need me to respond, I can. I can pin them up. I have night vision goggles, until the police can get here to see who this is. And
so your husband was leaving your house to go respond to Mr. English's problems?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever try to stop your husband, say, this is not our concern, don't do that?
No, sir.
Why?
Why not? Sorry.
It's dangerous, right? It's dangerous.
It could be, yes, sir, but if you don't know what, you're just going to find out, hey, what are you doing? What's going on here? That's not, it could be dangerous, yes, but it could not. So I didn't look at it as.
Did it not scare you when your husband would leave the home at night to go check on the streets?
It was very unnerving that what was going on, because you didn't know what was going on, but I guess I trusted my husband enough, and I knew, that I guess the Lord would protect him. Whatever he felt right as a husband and as the leader of our home to do, then that's what he should do.
Okay. How or what, if any, actions did you take once you started hearing about multiple intrusions in Larry English's property, 2 doors down from yours?
I messaged his wife on Facebook and asked, can we put up some no trespassing signs?
Who's Larry English's wife?
Larry English's wife.
Okay.
And ask, hey, can I put up some no trespassing signs? Maybe that'll deter, if you don't know, maybe if they see a sign and realize, hey, this isn't just, a random person building a house, it is an actual family building a house. Maybe that would deter something.
Did you ever call any of your surrounding neighbors to let them know that this intruder was here?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell us who you talked to about that?
I called Subi Lawrence.
Okay, single mom of 3.
Yes.
Across the street. So you and Subi were friendly beyond just neighbors?
Our kids went to daycare together, so I've known her for a long time. So yes, sir, I would say.
Okay. Did you ever post about the intrusions in Larry English's house, the break-ins in his house, on the neighborhood Facebook page?
I'm sure I have. Yes, sir.
Okay. Give me 1 second. If you'll turn to page 356 and see if that refreshes your memory about a post you made about the man breaking into Larry English's house.
Sorry, you said 356?
Page 356, yes.
Read it.
Just to yourself.
Oh, okay.
So did you post about the intruder in Larry English's house?
Yes, sir.
And tell the jury what you posted.
I said black male, short hair, tattoos on chest and arm, ?
And that was in response to what?
To a neighbor of ours, her husband's truck was broken into and 2 rifles and a pistol were stolen.
What's the date of your post?
The date of my post, December 8th of 2019.
December 8th, 2019, and you posted about a black male with short hair and tattoos on chest and arm. Why did you single out those characteristics?
Well, whenever I spoke to the police, and he showed me a picture, and that was the description that he gave me, and that's also what I could see from the videos. At that time, I think we had several videos of a black male, short hair, tattoos, chest and arm.
Was the post on December 8th your description of the man in Larry English's house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you recall an event on February 11th regarding Larry English's house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us what you recall from that date.
Larry either called, I think he might have called and sent a video and said, that the same guy is back. So Diego would usually go out the back because we thought that he was coming in the back. But he didn't. He went out the front door, and I went out behind him. And then I saw Mr. Greg and Travis coming down the road, and I was telling them, shh, Diego, be quiet, that's Diego. I couldn't tell, I thought Travis was talking to his dad, but he was talking loud and excited, and I'm like, hush, someone's down there, be quiet. And I stood in my driveway. At the time, our yards were fenced.
Your yards were not fenced?
Our yards were not fenced, no, sir. And so I have a really high-powered flashlight, and I turned it on, and I shined it from my driveway to the river, and I could see straight across the river. So that way, if he was running in the back, I would see someone running.
So this is at night?
Yes, sir.
It's dark outside?
Yes, sir.
You're literally leaving your house and going out
in my front yard.
To your front yard. Do you
Yes,
have
sir.
a weapon on you?
Yes, sir.
What do you carry?
Yes, sir.
What do you carry?
Oh, what? Para Ordinance 1911.
Okay. Pistol?
Yes, sir. 45.
Okay, 45. Is it in a holster? Or in your hand?
I think I might have had it tucked under my arm because I was holding my flashlight.
Now, why are you carrying your firearm out at night in a dangerous situation?
Who knows what am I going to encounter outside in my front yard? So, for my protection, my children are right inside this door.
So again, this is an intruder, someone at Larry English's house. You're putting yourself at risk.
In my yard, yes, sir.
In your yard, okay. Do you ever see the intruder that night?
No, sir.
Okay, but your husband was out, Mr. Travis and Mr. Gray. Okay. Did you see police respond?
Yes.
How long did you stay outside looking for a possible intruder?
not long at all. I, waited a couple seconds, and I figured by the time Diego, had got in, he would scare whoever it was, and if so, they would be coming this way. And shortly after I went inside,
Did you post about this incident as well?
I probably did.
Okay. Turn to the first page, 347. And see if that refreshes your memory.
Yes, sir.
Did you post about this incident?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What date did you post?
Looks like 2/12 of 20, February 12th.
So the next day.
Yes, sir.
And what did you post?
I said, it's the same guy the last few times. We have him all over camera, but boy, is he fast, and he knows our neighborhood really good.
Why would you say that?
Because literally it's 90 feet, 95-ish feet. My husband's pretty fast, but this guy was obviously, way faster because Diego had never, encountered him ever over there. So either he knows the neighborhood and knows, where to tuck in and hide, or he's booking it.
Okay. So as of now in February, still not found this intruder, and you're posting among your neighbors. Why are you posting this information?
To let them know, hey, this is the same guy. If it's not the same person, it would really be suspicious, but not like alarming. The same person coming over and over and over, it just made me, worry. Why is the same person coming over and over and over?
And it alarmed you because what were you thinking was happening?
I really didn't know what was happening. I assumed Mr. English didn't know who he was, and he had no business there, according to him, and that was his property. And he had told us, prior to that things had gone missing. So I just assumed the same person coming over and over and over, and you've had thousands of dollars of stuff missing. I assumed that it was the guy that would keep coming back.
So you put these various pieces together and made an assumption.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't see him steal anything, this black male intruder?
No, sir.
But from various pieces of information, you drew a conclusion.
Yes, sir.
Were you home on February 23rd? During the shooting?
Home. No, sir.
Okay. Where were you and your husband?
We were at church. Our church, St. Simon's Community, was building a new campus here in Brunswick, and we were donating our time to build our pastor an office in the church. So after church got out, we went and had pizza. We got new windshield wipers, and then we went to church. We did some drywall mud, and then went home.
Okay. When you got home from church, did you find out about the shooting of Mr. Arbery?
I was pulling into the neighborhood. A cop come hauling tail in, and our neighborhood's quiet, mostly older retired people. And I was like, what the heck is going on? So I got off, the side of the road, and he come flying on in, and I told my husband, I said, we're going to go and see what in the heck what's going on. So I drove around past our house, and that's when we came up on
the scene.
Yes,
right,
sir.
Right. Did you see Travis McMichael out there?
Yes, sir.
How did he look to you?
I don't know if scared, he looked just not himself. He just had his hands up, and he was just like, and I was like, what in the world? When I came up on it, I didn't know what happened. Didn't know what in the world it transpired to go on, but he was bloody, and he was just like pacing back and forth, and then I remember he just like kind of plopped himself down. They had like a tree that was pretty tall, and he just kind of like sat down and just kind of looked frazzled, and it was like, what the hell, I think is what I said.
Okay. Did you stick around?
No, I drove on. My husband said, he's dead, go. And we had our kids in the car, so.
Do you know if your surveillance cameras captured Mr. Arbery from that date?
Yes, sir.
And do you know what happened to the surveillance camera video from your house?
Diego put it on a USB and gave it to a cop on the scene that day.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Perez.
Yes, sir.
State.
Judge. Hey, Mrs. Perez, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. We've met before and talked, haven't we?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, on the 23rd, you own a black car, right?
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry.
It's okay, you can call me sir.
No.
But you were coming in and Officer Duggan was speeding right past you.
Yeah, somebody.
Okay. And you went down, Diego said, no, keep going.
Yeah.
All right, so you took the kids home.
Yeah.
But he wandered on down to the scene, didn't he?
Yeah, he wanted to, what in the heck? You know, it was a pretty gruesome sight to come up on, so he wanted to know what happened.
All right, now, let's talk about, I'm going to kind of back up and we'll talk about crime for a minute, okay? Now, you guys had never been the victim of crime up until this June 30th, 2019, when the tools got stolen out of the unlocked car in your driveway, right?
Yes.
All right. But you guys normally locked your cars, right?
Well, see, that's the thing with his truck. It actually had to go to the shop because Ford had some kind of problem where you would lock the truck and it would stay locked and then it would unlock itself. So he thinks he locked the truck. We said he locked the truck, and come to find out the truck was having issues. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
All right. So, as a Facebook administrator, you're just the person who's kind of like letting people join and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. But after the theft of the tools, you decided to go ahead and get some cameras.
Yeah.
And you were willing to share with the neighborhood the images on the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about the Facebook being used for things like water power, animal control.
Yep.
Okay. Kids selling cookies, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Charity events.
Yeah.
But your husband's not a member of the Facebook page.
My husband does not do any kind of life log, social media, nothing.
Okay. So he's not paying attention to what's going on Facebook.
No.
Now, your husband went ahead and volunteered to help out Larry English, right?
Yes.
So he's the one who made contact with Larry English to say, hey, I'm willing to go ahead and assist you. You live 2 doors down.
I think I had messaged his wife and gave him or her Diego's number and said, hey, you know, this is my husband's number. If you'll have your husband reach out to him, please. And that's when they had a phone conversation.
Now, when you asked Amy English, can we put up these trespassing signs, was that before or after this homicide?
I couldn't tell you.
You think it maybe was afterwards?
You can look at the Facebook messages. I honestly don't know.
Did you private message her or?
Yeah, private message.
So it's not going to show up, do you think? All right.
I don't know. I don't know how that goes.
Did they ever, before this incident, put up any no trespassing signs?
I don't know what they did on their property.
Well, did
I
you
don't know.
see any no trespassing signs?
They had a bunch of different signs up, so I couldn't tell you what one was and what one wasn't.
Okay. All right, and you're really close with Subi Lawrence.
Yeah,
She lives across the street.
she does.
All right. And that's who your husband's also close with. You guys known each other for a very long time, right?
Her mother.
Okay. Annabelle Beasley.
Yes.
And they live right next door.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking to Subi about what took place in the neighborhood, right? You were
Yes.
informing her.
Mm-hmm.
So, the problem with Larry English and his cameras is the camera goes off, he gets it on his phone, and then by the time he watches it, he calls Diego. Is that right?
Now we know that's right. We thought he was calling the police and then calling Diego, but we've learned after talking with you that that was not the case. So yes,
He was just calling Diego direct,
unfortunately, yes.
not calling the police.
No.
And your husband had had it with that, hadn't he?
Yeah, once he realized on February 11th, that's when he said, you don't ever have to worry about me. I'm not doing that again. Like, what in the world? Why would you put myself in danger like that?
Because he thought on February 11th that Larry
Larry
had
called the police, yeah.
but Larry hadn't called the police.
No.
And so your husband gets this Facebook message, or this text message.
Yeah.
I misspoke, the text message. And he goes over there because he's trying to be a good neighbor.
Yes, ma'am.
He actually went into that house, didn't he?
Yeah.
He went
And
in
he's
there.
went in that house so many times, so.
And when he goes in the house, he's usually going, private property,
No
private property.
trespassing, yeah. What are you doing here? I've heard him yell that, like, you know, what the hell are you doing here? Obviously not seeing anyone, but trying to get a reaction out of whoever is there, yes.
Okay. Because he just wants the person to go away.
Who are you? What are you doing here? Don't come back. This guy doesn't want you coming back. You know, you're bugging us. You know, what's going on?
So on this night, though,
I'm sorry, which night?
on the night of February 11th that we're talking about, remember that night?
Yes.
Okay, so Diego goes out of the house and he goes over there like he's normally doing. Does he have his high-powered flashlight with him?
Yeah.
Okay, and he's got his gun with him. And you come out the front door and you see Travis and Greg McMichael.
Yes.
All right, they're in Travis's pickup truck?
I think Travis might have been driving. I don't remember if Mr. Gray, I don't remember if he was walking by the truck or if he was in the truck. But I remember seeing both of them.
All right, and so they're coming back from which direction?
From their house towards the front of the neighborhood.
Okay, and you're communicating with them, telling them what?
I was trying to tell him, like, hush, hush, because, I mean, he was just so, wah, wah. I'm like, who are you talking to? Shut up. What are you doing? I didn't realize until, later that he was on the phone with 911. I thought he was talking to his dad, so.
Gotcha. And Greg McMichael, did you see him then go into the house as well?
I didn't see him go into the house because of the stuff, like Larry had a trailer and stuff, so you can't see, like, the front of Larry's house from my driveway looking over. But you can see the front yard, and I saw, his truck. He pulled it up in the front yard with his bright lights on. And I don't think Greg might have went in, but I think Travis stayed. I remember seeing Travis at the back of the truck.
So when you say Travis pulled the truck up, where did he pull it on the street or somewhere else?
So say this is the front yard and this is the street. He kind of, I think it might have been hanging out in the street, but I know, he pulled it up and he had his light shining on the house.
And you were afraid Greg McMichael was going to go in there and shoot your husband, weren't
That's
you?
why I was trying to tell him, hush, my husband's in there, letting him know, hey, if you come across someone, it's not, I didn't know how they, got down there. I didn't realize that Travis had saw the guy or any of that. I thought, oh gosh, Larry English is telling someone else in the neighborhood, and now, they're going down. Like, holy cow, this is not going to be a good situation if he didn't know my husband was in the house. So that's why I was trying to let him know, like, hush, Diego's in there,
Because you knew that they carried guns as well.
I didn't know them to know that they carried guns. No.
You didn't know them like that?
No, I didn't.
Right. But you were afraid that if they had a gun, they'd find your husband and shoot him.
Well, I knew that my husband had a gun, and I didn't want them to see my husband with a gun and just think he is this random person in the house and he's armed, so therefore, we need to bring a little bit that's what I just wanted them to know. Hey, that's my husband in there.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about, I want to make sure I've covered this. Oh yeah, with regard to Larry English and the missing stuff on his boat, he told you he suspected his subcontractors, right?
No, Diego actually told him. He didn't say he suspected anyone, but Diego said, well, what about the people with the tool bag? When they came out, is the tool bag heavier or fuller than what it looked? And he said, well, it might be, I'll check it out. I don't remember if he actually did come back and say, I know he came back and said, I asked them, but I don't remember if he ever said, yes, it was them. But I'm thinking that he didn't because we didn't know who had taken it. So I'm thinking if he said it was my HVACs, we wouldn't still be thinking somebody, is taking this.
Okay. So I want to make sure, because we have our subcontractors, okay, and then we have the white couple from November 17th who also went into the house.
Yes.
So are you talking about
The white couple is who I assumed was a subcontractor. Because the kind of tool bag he took is like an electrician bag, well, typically an electrician bag. So that's what I assumed was a subcontractor.
So you assumed that the white man and white woman who had gone into Larry English's open unsecured construction site on November 17th, 2019 were actually some of his subcontractors?
Yes.
And that they'd gone there to rip him off or steal some stuff?
I did not think that. My husband thought that.
And he told that to Larry?
Yes.
But I guess my question is, did you, or to your knowledge, your husband, were you guys ever informed that Larry actually suspected his own actual subcontractors, the HVAC guys?
I was not aware that Larry suspected that, no.
So Officer Rash never told you that either?
No.
So on December 8th, we're talking about December 8th, and Renee Herndon posting about her car getting broken into.
Yeah.
Okay. So you remember that post?
I do. What page was that again?
Let's go ahead and flip to page 356.
Okay.
All right, so do you remember Renee Herndon on 12/8/2019 talking about thieves broke into her truck last night, her husband's truck, and stole those guns?
Yeah.
Okay. And you then responded, black male, short hair, tattoos on chest and arm.
Mm-hmm. I was asking if
That was the description,
Yeah.
right? And she says it's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But the police showed us a picture of the guy you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right? And we're going to keep an eye out. It was Officer Rash, and he sounded like he's pretty familiar with all the suspicious activity that's been going on in our neighborhood. This is getting ridiculous, is what she responded. Is that
That's
right?
what she wrote.
Okay.
Renee Herndon.
And did you then check the cameras for her that night?
Yes, I did.
And you saw a suspicious car.
I did.
And did you also see the pictures that Renee Herndon had posted
In the
about the
neighborhood?
guy?
Mm-hmm. I think she posted it later on.
Oh, I know. Here. So I'm going to show you what's already been marked and admitted as states 327A and 327B. Are those the pictures that she had posted?
Yep, those were the ones she posted.
And did you ever, did Officer Rash ever follow up with you all and tell you that it was a white guy who had broken into their Jeep?
No.
You didn't know that?
No one ever followed up with us or anything, so. Yeah, because we had pictures of the car, or what we assumed was the car, and they never came by to get those on a USB, so.
So the police never came by to get anything from you guys about the car?
About
that
any
had-
of this, no.
Let me make sure I've covered everything, okay?
Okay.
All right, Mr. President, I'm going to hand you back over to the defense. They may have some more questions for you. I don't know, okay?
Redirect.
Ms. Perez, could you just describe the lighting conditions at 220 Satilla Drive at night?
There's no lights there. I know we had a street light put in, not, I don't know when, because there was no lights around there.
Did the darkness, the lack of light at that location cause you even greater concern if there's an intruder coming in that late?
Just because it was so pitch black dark, literally, and no lights around, it's kind of like, why kind of thing, but
Not just a looky-loo looking at architecture or something.
you can't
in
see
your mind.
anything in there that late at night. I mean, I was only there once at night, but the night that I was there, you
Okay.
couldn't see really anything.
The state asked you about the Renee Herndon incident in which weapons were stolen out of their cars. When she posted, "It's getting ridiculous," what did you page 356, what did you understand her to be talking about? It's getting ridiculous.
There were several car break-ins. I know, like backpacks were rummaged through, and some kids' backpacks were found in the, different yards and stuff. There's just a lot of suspicious activity, a lot of people coming and going into Mr. English's house, and it's just an uneasy feeling to not know, who it is, and the cops are being called, and they still don't know, who it is. It's just not a good feeling.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. President.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Yes, you may step down,
Thank you.
and you are released.
Thank you.
Your Honor, she's also under our, we're going to reserve the right to recall her
I'm
in
sorry,
case
you
we
are,
need to.
you are subject to recall, but you're excused for the day. Thank you.
Next calls Jack Brinson.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
We can have a 5-minute break, working together.
Let's do this. Sir, I'm going to, let's do the jury first. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to take a very short recess. Plan to come back probably in the next 5-10 minutes.
All right for the jury.
All right, sir, if you could just go ahead and step down. If you just wait out in the hallway, you should be recalled in just a moment.
Yes, sir. Put this back on.
Yes, please, thank you. All right, I guess we'll take a 10-minute recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, 10-minute recess.
I apologize, Your Honor. We spelled this next witness's name incorrectly by a vowel, and so the state didn't think he was on purpose.
It was Michael. I'll even take that.
So we had a little confusion, but the confusion is over now.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the remedy, it sounds like would be the state, if the state needs time to just talk to the witness briefly, but we're ready to move forward.
It was a E instead of an I, so it was good. Right address, right everything.
Kind of like comma issues becomes important. So.
We can live with that.
All right, looks like we've got everybody back. Mr. Sheffield, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and get the witness back up. I guess it's not the state's witness. Whoever you had.
Mr.
All right, you can go to have a seat, sir. And I remind you that you are under oath.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead and get the pen.
All rise for the jury. Please be seated.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. I believe we are ready to proceed. Mr. Sheffield.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Brinson.
Good afternoon.
Could you please spell your first and last name?
Jack, J-A-C-K, Brinson, B-R-I-N-S-O-N.
Mr. Brinson, how old are you?
I'm 67.
Are you married?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
41 years.
Okay. And where do you live?
I live in Satilla Shores.
What street do you live off of?
I live on Zellwood Drive.
On Zellwood, okay. And where on Zellwood is it? Is it closer to Highway 17 or to the back of the neighborhood?
It's to the back.
Okay. How long have you lived there?
We have lived there, my wife and I have lived there for a little over 35 and a half years.
Okay. Do you have any other family that lives in the neighborhood?
Yes, my daughter and son-in-law live next door and 3 grandchildren.
They live where?
Right next door.
Oh.
And I want to apologize. I'm a little hoarse. I've had a cough, so if I.
Okay. Well, there's
We'll-
some tissue
just bear with
next
me.
to you if you need them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you for letting us know. You said your daughter and 3 grandchildren.
Yes,
All right. And what is your daughter's name?
Jill.
And what is your son-in-law's name?
Brandon Gregory.
Okay. How is he employed?
He is a detective with the Clinton County Police Department.
Okay. I want to ask you some very limited questions about your experiences in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Okay. At any point in time, did you become aware of ongoing crime in the neighborhood?
Yes.
All right. What type of crime were you aware of?
At the first, that my experience was probably about 6 years ago, where my vehicle was broken into, and I didn't realize it until the next morning when I went to go get my coffee, and you could see someone had been in my glove box, and everything was strewn around. And I keep a bunch of quarters in an ashtray in that car just for tire pressure, things like that. And the ashtray poured out, and the quarters were gone.
I'm going to stop you there. What kind of work do you do or did you do?
I was a sales tax and withholding tax auditor for the compliance division of the Georgia Department of Revenue for 30 years.
Okay. Did anything happen to some of your stuff related to your work in terms of being stolen?
Not that I know of.
Oh, okay. You were saying then that you had some things stolen from your car.
Yes.
And that
CDs and things like that, but nothing really of value.
Okay. Do you know whether or not your wife is a member of the Facebook Satilla Shores page?
Yes, she is.
Are you aware whether she posts on that page?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Do you all discuss the types of things that are posted on the Facebook page as it may relate to crime?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to ask you if you ever became aware of any crime as it relates to Larry English's house, 220 Satilla Shores.
Objection to hearsay if this is based on the Facebook page, Judge.
Well, it's not based on the Facebook page.
Or whether he heard it from his wife, who got it from the Facebook page.
I'm just going to ask him if he's aware of it, Your Honor. I haven't gotten to the hearsay part just quite yet. Just want to establish a little foundation if he's aware of what's going on in the neighborhood.
All right.
We're asking about who's aware of crime.
Okay.
Are you aware of any thefts occurring in Larry English's home?
Yes.
And did you come to understand the type of things that were stolen from his home? Without saying what you were told, did you become aware of the types of things that were stolen in the home?
Yes, and also a dollar amount.
Without going into what you were
Okay.
told. Okay. And do you recall who you learned that from?
Various,
Just the name of the person or persons.
various people.
Can you name them?
I would say one would have been Matta Benzie, maybe Taylor Zachary, maybe, I don't know, probably several other people, word gets around.
Did you discuss these types of things with your wife and your daughter and your son-in-law?
Yes.
Did you all make any changes in your habits to try to address or deal with some of the crime that was going on in the neighborhood?
Yes, after that first instance, as minor as it was, we had fake cameras at that point, and we bought a camera system ourselves. And,
So you had fake?
Yeah, we had, try to just
To
let someone think we had a camera system out.
Okay.
So then we actually went out and bought actual real cameras.
Okay, very good. That's all I have. Thank you, sir. The state may have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
No questions, Judge.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Okay.
I understand he can be released.
Yes.
Yes, it must.
And, sir, you can step down and you are released. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's call Annabelle Beasley.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Nothing but the truth.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Annabelle
And Miss Beasley, where do you live?
I live in Satilla Shores. 225 Citadel Shores, Brunswick, Georgia.
And how far is that from Sue B. Lawrence's house?
Next door.
Could you tell the jury how you related to Miss Lawrence?
She's my daughter, and since she's single, divorced, I asked her to move next door so I could keep an eye on the kids.
How long have you lived in that house?
Since 2004.
So 16, 17 years?
Longer than that.
Longer than that. My math is wrong. And you mentioned your grandchildren, Subi's
No,
children.
1994, I'm sorry.
1994, okay, Sue, it's not my math, it's your math.
My math is.
All right, and you mentioned grandchildren. How many kids does Subi have?
She has 3 boys.
And how old are they?
Right now, the oldest is 15. I have a 13 and a 10.
Okay. Please describe for us the type of neighborhood Satilla Shores is. Certainly when you moved in 1994 and as it's gotten
When
closer.
I moved in 1994, it was an older neighborhood, a lot of seniors in there, and it was quiet. I think my kids were the only 2 daughters that grew up next door, grew up right there. They went to high school, they were in Satilla Shores, and so we didn't know a whole lot of neighbors then because a lot of seniors tend to keep to themselves. But in the last few years, things have evolved, and the seniors have moved on, and we've got younger families in the neighborhood.
So more children in the neighborhood.
That is correct.
Do you know the children who live across the street at the Perez residence?
I certainly do.
Okay, how do you know those kids?
I know those kids really well. I've known them since they were little because they went to the daycare with my little grandkids.
Okay.
Yes. And I've known Diego since he was a young boy at Sunday school. And then we reconnected, and then I found out that he's buying a house across the street from me. And I said, what a blessing.
Okay. That's wonderful. So the neighborhood was elderly, now it's more younger families. Do you live with anybody in your house?
No.
Okay. Do you do anything to maintain your own security at your house?
I have recently, after all the happenings in the neighborhood. It was unnerving. And so I had to, she's single, she couldn't defend me, I got to protect myself. So it became necessary to have cameras put up.
Okay, and you have cameras at your front door, or what parts of your house?
I think I only have one at the front door.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was put on recently, so.
Okay. Did there come a time when you yourself became the victim of a property crime?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us about that?
Well, I was in China, and my black Honda was sitting in my driveway, and my kids, I communicated with them every day, and they discovered that the car was broken into, the door was wide open, and they had been in, so they saw that it was all ransacked. And I asked my daughter if she reported it to the police, and she said no, because the week before, somebody's Jeep was broken into, and the police said, you should have locked your door, there's nothing we can do about it. And since my door was unlocked, she decided not to call the police.
Mm. Did you end up, when you came home from China, calling the police about it or anything?
No, it was way past, yeah.
Okay, so it was a crime that's unreported to the police.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you become aware of a situation where Subi's cameras, Miss Lawrence's cameras, went off one night in 2019?
She told me about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you, as a result of what she told you, did you do anything about that?
Not personally, no.
Didn't change security, didn't change
No.
your...
I have a security system in the house.
Right. Like an alarm system?
Right.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that Miss Lawrence has 3
Boys.
kids, 3 boys.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of those boys ever going across the street to Mr. English's house to borrow some pieces of wood?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of them ever playing at Mr. English's house?
They played with Mr. English's son. And Mr. English's son would come across and play with them. And Mr. English, when they were using scrap wood to make a ramp, he said he would build them a ramp.
Okay. And do you know if that ever happened?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Did there ever come a time when your grandchildren became too afraid to play outside?
Yes.
And do you know what happened?
Well, I think they were scared by what they saw. And then they called their grandmother one night. I wasn't there, and their mama was at a birthday dinner, and they saw somebody. Pardon me?
No, not you. You can sustain or overrule that objection.
Yeah, this is what she heard that the boys were reacting to.
Okay.
That's the same.
Let me move past what they told you.
Okay.
Did there come a time where they stopped playing outside at night?
We wouldn't allow them to.
You didn't allow them. You say we, you're talking about you and Miss Lawrence.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And why wouldn't you allow them to play outside?
Because we didn't want them to encounter anything, you know.
I think this is all still based on hearsay from what she heard from either the board or somebody else. So the reaction or what they're allowing them to do because of that is still based on that hearsay.
Okay, let's focus on this. Figure out.
Yeah.
It sounds like she made a decision. Let's figure out what her decision is and why.
Right, and that's what I was trying to do, Judge. Do not tell us what the boys told you, but did there come a time when they stopped playing outside?
That's correct.
And you said you didn't want them to play outside.
Correct.
And tell us why you and Miss Lawrence made the decision not to let them play outside.
Because of things that were happening in the neighborhood. Okay. We didn't want the boys out there. We didn't want them to confront or see anything that they shouldn't. You know, we didn't want them to be a victim of anything, so we let them stay inside.
The safety
and
issue.
even till today, they barely go out except now. Now that they're older, they will play, but as long as we are home, it's okay for them to be out there. But they do go across to Perez's house, and we're okay with that.
As long as they're being oversight.
They're right, exactly.
Okay. Was there a time, Miss Beasley, when you were interviewed by GBI agents?
Yes.
Okay, do you know when that was?
When the incident occurred.
The incident being the shooting of Mr.
That is
Arbery?
correct.
Okay, and you gave a statement to the GBI?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's all I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Anything from the state?
I just have a couple questions. Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
Good afternoon. Fine, thank you.
I'm Paul Camarillo. I'm part of the prosecution team.
Nice to meet you.
We may have talked on the phone, I
think
believe.
you did. You and I had a long conversation.
We did, right?
I do remember that.
Okay.
You know, yes.
Was it a good one?
Yes, it was a good one.
Okay.
I think I told you all that I was thinking.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
You did. You did. And not all of that is relevant evidence.
Okay,
All right?
gotcha.
So I just got a few questions for you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You've been in the neighborhood a long time.
Right.
Okay. Is it fair to say that a vast majority of these crimes that occurred in the neighborhood were property crimes, or car break-ins and that sort of thing?
Correct.
Okay. Other than the homicide of Mr. Arbery, violent crimes were few and far between or non-existent in the neighborhood. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Ma'am, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
May she be excused.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Is she under state subpoena?
No.
All right, and you are excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That's called Subi Lawrence.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So help me God, yes I do.
Ready to receive.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Ms. Lawrence, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to the jury.
Okay, my name is Subie Lawrence, Subelawrence.
And we just met your lovely mother, but I want to make sure she spoke loud enough. I want to make sure you speak loud enough so that last jurors back there can hear you, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Lawrence, what kind of work do you do?
I'm in recruitment.
Okay. And how long have you been in, like a headhunter kind of recruitment?
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been in that?
15 years.
Okay. Here in Brunswick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about your job and being here at this trial?
I do.
Okay. Well, what are you concerned about?
I obviously just don't want any negative impact in my career and personal life.
Okay. But you're willing to testify today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you tell us where you live?
I live at 221 Satilla Drive.
And where is that in relation to Annabelle Beasley?
Right next door.
Okay. And where is that in relation to Larry English's house?
So he's kind of catty-cornered. If you're facing away from my house, he is across the street and one over.
Okay. Do you also know Brooke and Diego Perez?
Yes.
And how do you know the Perez's?
My middle and her oldest went to preschool together, and then just since moving to the neighborhood have become friends.
When did you move into Satilla Shores?
August 2015.
Okay. Was there a time before you moved in 2015 where you lived in Satilla Shores?
Yes, sir. I moved there in 9th grade with my family, my mom, dad, and sister, into the house my mom lives in 1994.
Okay. Then at some point you moved out?
I did. I got married and moved out and got divorced and came back.
Okay. Okay. And so how would you describe your relationship with the Perez's?
Oh, very close. They are definitely good neighbors, good friends, like other parents to my boys. One time we actually had, the boys were playing baseball in the front yard, and a ball went through the dining room window, and Diego just happened to hear glass crashing and runs over, and he had it repaired before he went to bed that night. And then Brooke's over with her vacuum cleaning up all the glass. So they look out for us. So
they're neighbors that help you?
Yes.
With all the things that
circus
three boys, right?
Yes, sir.
I want to go back to 2019. How old were your three boys at that point?
They were 8, 11, and 13.
Okay.
Ish.
Did they have any kind of relationship with Mr. English or his children?
Yes, Hoyt, Mr. Larry's son, and my middle are about the same age, and so they would play together. And Mr. Larry actually gave them some wood for a ramp, for a bicycle ramp.
Okay. Have you ever seen Mr. English's surveillance video of two boys on his property?
I have.
On bikes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who those boys are?
Those are my children.
Oh boy. And what were they doing in that video, to your understanding?
They were going to get the plywood for the ramp Mr. Larry made them.
Okay. So they had permission, essentially, to get the wood?
Yes.
Okay. Did they ever go into Mr. English's house at night, to your knowledge?
No, sir.
Okay. I want to take you back to October 2019.
Okay.
Okay. Was there a time when your camera on your own home security system alerted you?
Yes, sir. It was late October, and it was late in the evening, so I want to say the boys and I were at a football game or the fair or something on a Friday night maybe that was, that had us out late, 10 o'clock-ish, I guess. And so I got an alert on my Blink cameras that, there was motion detected. So I look at it and I see two men with flashlights looking at the front of the house. And so, of course, I call Brooke and just say, there are guys at my house with flashlights. Can you please send Diego over to see what's going on?
Okay, and why would you ask Brooke to send her husband into a difficult situation?
Because Diego is...
There's no object speculation.
I asked her why. Yeah.
I feel very safe with Diego. I know that he would look out for me and my boys, at all cost.
Okay. And did you eventually come to understand who was on the camera that alerted you? Did you ever find out?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Diego came over and figured it out and relayed it through Brooke.
Okay. Did you ever, as a result of that incident, talk to the police?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever post anything on the neighborhood Facebook page?
In general, yes. About that specifically, I don't recall.
Okay. When you say in general, what kinds of things were you posting on the neighborhood Facebook page?
Who do you use for a landscaper? The ice cream truck is in the neighborhood. Just kind of general, neighborly, keep you updated sort of things.
Okay. Did you ever post anything about crime in the neighborhood?
I didn't initiate a post. I may have commented on a post about crime in the neighborhood.
Okay. Any of those posts related to Larry English's house?
I don't recall specifically.
Okay. Were you kept informed of the intruder in Larry English's house over the course of the late fall 2019 and early 2020?
Yes, sir. So if Brooke would find out that there was a suspicious person lurking, she would usually text or call me and say, tell the boys to get inside and lock the doors. The guy's back at Larry's.
And what would you do when she would tell you that?
Well, kind of at this point, the boys were staying inside a lot anyway. So, I mean, you know, I would still tell the boys, don't go outside, stay inside, lock the doors.
Were your boys, would you describe them as physically active young kids?
Very.
And so were they, before all these break-ins, playing outside?
Always.
Okay, building ramps for skateboards
Yes, sir.
and riding their bikes.
Yes, sir.
Were they outside at night?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when that you stopped them from playing outside at night?
I didn't have to stop them. As, you know, reports of car break-ins and suspicious persons, you know, lurking around, they kind of did that themselves. They didn't want to even come help get the groceries out of the car at night because they were just, you know, just a little afraid.
Okay. As a result of your awareness of break-ins in Larry English's house, did you take any security measures to protect yourself and your kids?
Before I knew about the break-ins at Mr. Larry's, I had read on our Facebook page about a car being broken into. And so after that, I got the Blink camera system.
Okay. And were you kept aware about crime in the neighborhood through your neighborhood Facebook page?
Yes, sir.
Did you find it to be helpful?
Very helpful.
Okay. Did you, were you ever one of the administrators of the Facebook page?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, what does that mean to be an administrator?
So just to have access to who's joining the page, what kind of things are being posted in the page. We wanted to make sure that they were actually people that lived in our neighborhood or, you know, had a legitimate reason to be in the group.
Okay. Did you notice over the course of when you moved back in 2015, anything about crime in the neighborhood, whether it was rising or falling, or?
Growing up there'd never been crime, and you know, I'm ashamed to say I didn't always do a great job of double checking that my car was locked, but when I started to see frequent posts about cars being broken into, and not only in our neighborhood page, but the Exit 29 Facebook group, people would post from the neighborhood next door. So of course I was just a little more diligent about making sure that you know, the car was locked and the doors were locked and windows that I hadn't checked and that sort of thing.
Did Brooke, Perez, or any other neighbor, or the Facebook page for that matter, ever inform you about how many times this black male was coming onto Larry English's property at night?
Not so much the Facebook group. It was probably more just text from Brooke saying, you know, get the boys inside.
Okay. And when she would text you that, would you make sure the boys were inside?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. How did that make you feel, the fact that there was someone coming over?
Violated. Upset that my kids weren't getting to grow up in the safe neighborhood I grew up in. Previously, we lived on some land, and we had a dirt driveway, and all they wanted was a neighborhood with roads so that they could ride their bikes. And so to have to say, come inside, stay inside, or Mom, I don't want to go outside, it was just disappointing.
Even though it wasn't violent crime, it still affected you and your boys?
Well, crimes of opportunity may not start as violent crimes. It's just someone's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I didn't want my boys to be home alone and someone think because there's not a car there, there's no one home, and then they're in that situation without me.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
Hey, I'm well, thank you.
My name is Paul Camarillo, and I'm one of the prosecutors here.
Yes, sir.
We've never spoke before, right?
No, sir.
Okay. I may have left you a voicemail or two, but we've never actually connected, right?
No, but I'm sorry if I missed that.
Oh, it's okay.
Definitely would have called you back.
No, it's okay. Would you?
Yes. I'm very brave.
All right. I'm not that scary.
Okay.
You and Mr. Rubin were talking about break-ins at Mr. English's house.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody there actually ever broke into anything. Is that correct? That you know of? It wasn't a secured house. Somebody walked through the door.
I don't know if there were even doors.
Right, there weren't. But
so Mr. Camarillo, that's testifying.
Just as your sons went in that garage, the open garage.
Yes, sir.
You're not aware of any sort of doors or windows or anything else that was on that property?
No, sir.
Okay. All right.
At the time that we're speaking of?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, sir.
Currently, there might be.
I think so.
Okay. All right. So you're friends with the Perez's,
Mm-hmm.
close friends, right? Y'all have had dinner together?
Mm-hmm.
Exchanged texts and calls and that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all went on a boat ride with the Perez's and Mr. McMichael over here?
Mr. Gregg and Travis. Or Mr. Gregg and Miss Lee.
Yeah, right. Okay. And that was shortly, that was after the homicide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Y'all talk about friends and family, that sort of thing?
On the boat ride?
No, I'm just in general.
The Perez's and
Yeah.
I? Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, and then after the shooting, you and Brooke walked over there, or kind of meandered over there to see what was going on, right?
The day of?
The day of?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you two were standing there together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you know Miss Lee McMichael?
I do.
How do you know her?
Lee and I work for the same place, so in passing, just colleagues.
Same hospital?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Y'all see each other in passing, talk about friends and family, live in the same neighborhood?
We don't usually chit-chat, but we're friendly.
Okay. Friendly enough that y'all wanted a boat ride together?
Yes,
After your
so,
incident?
right. Brooke and Diego invited me, and I'm not going to turn down a boat ride.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Did you know Mr. Arbery?
I did not.
Before this happened, did you ever hear about him?
Not by name.
You never heard that name before, right?
Correct.
None of your friends or family knew him?
No, sir.
The incident at your house where you said that you saw two guys with a flashlight, those are police officers, right?
Yes, sir.
You never saw any trespassers on your camera that night?
Correct.
You just saw the aftermath of people looking for somebody?
Right.
And in fact, you've never seen a trespasser on your camera ever?
Correct.
Did you ever view surveillance videos from anybody else's house, personally?
Being so far after the fact, I don't know if the videos I saw were, just from the internet or anyone's phone. I mean, if I did, it would have been from Brooke's phone, but I don't know.
Your mom had her car broken into, right?
Yes, sir.
And when I say
Rummaged through, it was unlocked.
It was unlocked. We tend to use that term pretty loosely, right?
Yes, sir.
Door was unlocked, car went through. Still unnerving.
Very.
Nobody wants that to happen.
Right.
Didn't call 911?
No, I did not report it, and my mom was out of the country and asked why I didn't, and I'd seen on the Facebook page that someone's car was also, things were stolen, and when she did report it, the police were maybe a little flippant about it, just a car break-in, make sure you lock your doors, so I thought I'm not going to call the police for her car being rummaged through.
That seemed to be a trend in the neighborhood? That seemed to be a trend, people leaving their cars unlocked and things taken out?
I don't know if they were all unlocked or not. But you should still be able to leave your car unlocked to know your things are safe.
100%. 100%. And it's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault.
Right.
Right? Since you've lived in Satilla Shores, you haven't personally witnessed any car break-ins, correct?
No.
You haven't witnessed personally any property crime?
Crime other than...
Property crime?
No.
Okay. You've never witnessed or heard about any physical assaults?
No.
Really the only thing that was going on was this car break-ins?
Car break-ins and several reports of a person that no one knew kind of lurking around. My boys called one night when I was at a restaurant and it was like 8:30 and they said...
Judge, I would object
Oh,
to...
sorry.
Yeah. A non-responsive answer. Asked to strike that.
I would ask that she be allowed to complete her answer.
I asked about assaults, and then it went into something else.
All of it against the state. Yes. Move on. Can't remember where the objection came from.
Mentioning suspicious person.
Yeah, she
No, it was non-responsive.
It was non-responsive.
That's the thing of it.
As the administrator of the Facebook page, you were able to see all the different types of theories about who might be doing this, right?
I had access to, didn't necessarily engage or read it actively.
Did you get alerts on
Every
your
day.
phone as the administrator from being a part of Satilla Shores?
I turned off my notifications from Facebook in general just because they get overwhelming at times.
Fair enough. Had you heard that people thought it might be teenagers?
I don't recall.
Okay. I want to talk to you, Ms. Lawrence, about a time when you had a conversation with Travis McMichael after the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember speaking with him in his driveway at some point after the shooting about this case?
No, sir. I remember he was coming home one night, and I was out in the road, and he just stopped and we talked.
Okay. And y'all talked about the case and what happened?
Right. Yes, sir.
Right. And he told you there was a video out there?
Yes, sir.
And that him and his dad were planning on, quote unquote, leaking it?
Right.
And you agreed to help him do that?
Probably not at that time. And I didn't agree to leak it.
At some point, you and Travis had a conversation about
that I would share it once it got out.
Correct.
Right.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it had to do with you helping get his version of what happened out.
Right. The neighborhood's version of past events and, yes, kind of all the things that led to this.
Right. Because at this point, everybody had seen that video, right? Or a lot of the neighbors. You've seen it.
I have seen it, but I don't know about everything.
They showed it to you. They showed it to you.
Correct.
On their phone or wherever they had it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, nobody knew that they actually engaged in a full-on chase through the neighborhood. Correct?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know what everyone knew.
No, what I'm asking, what they told you. Did they ever tell you that they chased Mr. Arbery or followed him in a car or whatever you want to characterize it? They never told you that, correct?
I don't know that.
But they? Who are we talking about?
Greg and Travis. Greg and Travis. They never told you they engaged in that chase, right?
Correct.
And you never heard from anybody else about that?
I'm sorry, objective form of question about what?
You never engaged with any sort of conversation with anybody else about a chase that occurred, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I didn't know there was a chase.
At some point after the homicide, and I don't know if it's before or after this conversation, Travis asked you to admit him into the Satilla Facebook page under the name Travis Hafner. And it was a fake Facebook page, correct?
Correct. Because his actual Facebook page had been hacked.
But he didn't take the time to set up a new one under his real name.
I don't know that Facebook makes it that easy, but
Okay.
also I don't know what he did.
Because he wanted to know what people were talking about this.
I'm going to object to Mr. Camarillo asking what Travis McMichael believed.
No, this was a conversation he had. I'm asking about the conversation he had.
So I would ask that it be clarified where the information's come from the foundation.
You and him talked about the purpose of him creating this Facebook page, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that purpose was from him to be able to monitor what was going on throughout the neighborhood under this fake name.
Monitor what was going on? I don't.
Look at what people were saying.
Right.
At some point, the neighbors were as you said, they post about maybe water that got shut off, complaints with things going on in the neighborhood, crime of some sort, right? That's kind of the general things that were being posted on the Facebook page, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And at some point, there were strings of messages or posts about car break-ins that were happening. You remember all that?
Fair enough. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you engaged in some of those conversations, and at some point on January 30th, you posted about leaving your window down, and you were lucky nobody took your purse and wallet in the front seat.
Right.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Bub and Renee Herndon posted about their gun being stolen, right?
I don't recall.
Don't recall. At the very end of that, Travis posted, "They're playing with fire on this side of the neighborhood." Remember seeing that? He posted that?
I don't.
One minute, okay? Ma'am, that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Lawrence, Mr. Camarillo asked you about the video that we've seen in this case regarding the shooting of Mr. Arbery. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you were willing to share it, right? Share it meaning the video.
Right.
How are you going to share it?
Texts or social media.
Post it somewhere?
Yes, sir.
Send it to friends or family? And why? Tell us why you were willing to share that video.
To me, I felt it matched the story that I knew to be true of this person lunging for the gun, and so this is the story I heard and have no reason not to believe. And so seeing the video kind of confirmed, okay, this matches the story and the video match. So you're lucky you have this on video.
Okay. And so you were willing to put it out because you believed it to be the truth.
Yes, sir.
And about what time of year was this? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't.
Was it after the media had gotten a hold of the story and was kind of blowing things up?
It was after the video was released and then didn't get a positive response.
Okay. All right. Did you ever share the video?
No.
Okay. But you were willing to?
Yes.
Okay. The Travis Hafner, I think, was that the name Mr. McMichael wanted to use?
I don't recall. But
Okay. Tell us about that. What had happened prior to him approaching you as you understood it? Why he needed a new moniker on Facebook?
Someone had hacked into his account, and so I guess, I don't know if they automatically shut it down or he had to shut it down, but it was, just a way to get on Facebook.
Okay. And was this, again, after the national media had started reporting about the shooting of Mr. Arbery? Do you recall? I
believe it was after.
Okay. And as the administrator, what did you have to do to allow Mr. McMichael to
I don't know that I actually did. I'm sure there's a record. I'm not saying I didn't, but it's just an easy approve or decline.
Okay. And tell the jury why you were willing to approve Mr. McMichael, Travis, being on the Facebook page under a different name.
I believed the account of the events as they transpired, as they were told to me by the family, and didn't see a reason he shouldn't have access to what people were thinking.
So it was to monitor what other people were saying about him? Is that as you understood it?
Or maybe not necessarily of him, but of the event in general.
Okay. Did you, as the administrator of the neighborhood Facebook page, see anything wrong with that?
No.
Was the name Travis Hafner or whatever name was used by Travis or anybody else to put out information about the case, to your knowledge?
I don't think he actually posted anything,
Okay.
but I don't.
You don't recall? Okay. Just give me 1 second. Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Appreciate it. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Is she released?
Yes. We would ask.
She understates the Ma'am, you are. You can step down. You are released.
Thank you.
Your Honor, before the next step, we'd ask that the jury be asked to step out and we bring a matter up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take we'll plan on 15 minutes, 15-minute recess.
All right for the jury. Please be seated.
Your Honor, because the defense of Travis and Greg McMichael has been joint in many ways, before there is any resting that goes on, I wanted to revisit and make sure that we have perfected the record on several issues, especially now given the additional evidence that's come before the court concerning the issues of mental health, the issues of Ahmaud Arbery being on probation at the time of this event, and the use of force expert, all three of which this court has prohibited our introducing evidence on. So if this works okay, we haven't actually worked this ballet out here, but if I could, the mental health evidence was prohibited by this court. But since that time, you now have testimony from Travis McMichael where there have been complete descriptions of behaviors and conclusions drawn from those behaviors by Travis McMichael that are consistent with a number of the things that were reported in the Gateway records and would have been corroborated and explained even further by Kelly Kaufman, who was our mental health expert. So I can do each of these, or I can lay out the new information that we asked the court to consider. Would you prefer that I go by each?
Well, once you get through it, then I'll try to address it in the
Very
same way.
good. Thank you, Your Honor. Second, we had also sought to introduce evidence that Ahmaud Arbery was on probation under 2 felony offenses. A great deal of exposure still left on those. The court denied that motion. I point out that in the state's case, the medical examiner was permitted to testify about fight or flight, and even after objection was permitted to give his opinion concerning fight or flight and cortisol, etc., as being the explanation in his mind for, under the state's questioning, the decision to make a sharp left versus a sharp right out of the neighborhood. Number 2, with respect to probation, under the cross-examination of Travis McMichael, he was cross-examined by Ms. Donikoski at several points for quite some time about, in a way that indicated that the state's position found it to be incredulous that Ahmaud Arbery would just have run back at Travis McMichael at 2 different occasions, and then certainly that he would have directly run at Travis McMichael to engage in a behavior that is otherwise unreasonable. So for that reason, we would ask that the court reconsider and allow us to introduce evidence of Ahmaud Arbery's probationary status as further explanation for why fight or flight, while that is the state's theory for taking the sharp left and attacking Travis McMichael, may have been to avoid being apprehended by the police and, again, having to do time or face further investigation for his probationary status. And third, the use of force expert. We had asked for a use of force expert, or primarily the Travis McMichael team, to explain to the jury the theories that Travis McMichael did a very good job explaining on his own. However, once he explained them, he was cross-examined by the state on the way that he implemented that training, and even at one point an exhibit from his training was placed on the Elmo, if that's what it's still called. I don't know if that's on the screen. On the screen for the jurors concerning some of the training and the ways that Travis McMichael would have made decisions on that training. Because he was cross-examined, I believe now the state has opened the door for the use of force expert and testimony to come in to provide the support necessary to corroborate his testimony for which he was cross-examined. So while we do need rulings on those three, given this additional evidence in the state's case and the defense case, we also need to perfect the record for a proffer, as a more complete proffer as to what the mental health evidence would have been. The court is aware, because of the records that we submitted, of Ahmaud Arbery's probationary status. I believe you have those records already. And then I need to just inquire of Travis McMichael's team as to whether the use of force expert testimony has been properly proffered as to what he would have said had he been allowed to testify, and his credentials.
And I think the gateway records, and I'll have to look, but the gateway records were reviewed by the court and then sealed into the case.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, I believe that is the case, Your Honor. And of course, there are a few other things that we're going to make sure are in the record that doesn't change much now and doesn't require us doing them before anybody rests. You know, some of the note. I'm sorry.
For the record, we would join in the three issues that the McMichaels have raised before we move on to something else, if that's okay. All I would add, Your Honor, is maybe I missed it, and I certainly don't mean any criticism. I think I owe the court a few things, but I don't think I've seen or been served with a copy of the court's order on the probationary status ruling, and honestly, I was waiting for that so that I could move to reconsider. But it's hard for me to move to reconsider when I don't actually have the reasoning of the court on that. So I hope the court would allow me that opportunity in the morning, assuming that sometime before 9 a.m. the court enters an order on that. You've orally indicated that you wouldn't allow it. You've indicated that you would follow up with a written order, kind of like I promised I'd do a bunch of things, and I'm still working on those. It's not a criticism, but I was hoping to have the court's written order before being in a position where I had to either move to reconsider or waive the issue. So I'm not only joining in that, but I'm humbly asking the court, if the court can, the court's under no obligation to enter a written order, but my understanding was the court gave us a short summary of its reasoning with the representation it would follow up when it had the opportunity, because the court hasn't had anything else to worry about during this trial. When the court had the opportunity, I would like the opportunity to move for the court to reconsider when I have that written ruling.
And I was through with those three. I just wanted to let the court know that we will perfect the record with some of the other things we agreed to place under seal, one of the notice of filings, and then the Facebook records with respect to some of the cause strikes that we had made. We all agreed to get those under seal. I just haven't gotten that done yet.
There are a number that probably need to go through at some point, make sure everybody's on the page with what those items are, just to make sure that the record is complete based on what everyone understands either has been or has been promised to be submitted. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge. On the subject of evidence that we feel the court should reconsider before we have to decide whether we're closing or not, the 404B evidence that we had submitted to the court, where we heard a lot of testimony from uniformed officers. We heard testimony from a uniformed officer in a park setting where he approached to try to speak to Mr. Arbery about some suspicions that he had about Mr. Arbery and how that de-escalated into confrontation. We heard that it escalated into confrontation, excuse me. That officer was dressed in uniform with badge and gun in a marked patrol car, and that still happened. We have the encounter in Burke County where Mr. Arbery was chased out of an abandoned building where they suspected marijuana use. He was shouted at, told to stop running, come back, police, by an officer in official clothing with badge, gun, police cars, and did not.
The submission of evidence, I mean, I think there were 10 separate incidents submitted, of which the court has addressed in the order, and we received evidence through hearing. That's all part of the record.
Okay.
So I understand which motion you're talking about.
Got it. Thank you, Judge. So what we've seen then in the case, and the reason why we're asking the court to reconsider this evidence now, and we want to limit it to it wouldn't be all 10 things, it would be things that speak to this particular issue, which is the state has asked all law enforcement officers about their manner of dress, their clothing, and how they use that for presence and to talk to people and make arrests, and to try to, I think, distinguish what they did with Mr. McMichael, which is you were not in uniform, you did not have a badge, you were not in an official car, you didn't have any official looking presence, and they also questioned Mr. McMichael about Mr. Arbery has no obligation to stop and talk to you. He has no obligation to speak to you. He has no obligation to explain himself. He can run away from you, and you weren't wearing a uniform and badge, etc. So this has made now relevant the fact that for Mr. Arbery, for Mr. Arbery in particular, when an individual approaches Mr. Arbery and questions him about his conduct, he doesn't engage in a typical fashion. He runs or he gets combative or confrontational, and we have evidence of that over the timeline which we've submitted to the court. The state has now presented this evidence to the jury through the questions and answers, and I guarantee you will argue it in closing that Travis McMichael, dressed as a plainclothes person, Mr. Arbery had no obligation, and thereby essentially create this chasm. The jury should be made aware about the 404B evidence for the purpose that it is limited for, which is to show motive and intent. They're going to get into his intent and have done so already by opening the door on several other occasions, talking about an opening statement being an avid runner, talking an opening statement about Nike shoes so worn that the tread was worn off, that he ran off on his jog toward the McMichael's house, that he never stole anything, he never took anything. Through Matt Albenzi, they questioned him, saying, you don't know why he was in the house, sort of baiting the witness. You don't know why Mr. Arbery ran, introducing the issue of his intent in the house or him running. They actually brought Kelly Parr to testify, and she even talked about his behavior and his intent and what he did not do, like ducking or hiding or running away, that he just stood there. Again, putting his conduct into the case. The 911 call, they allowed Larry English to testify that he looked like he was drunk or on drugs or disoriented. Officer Rash was allowed to testify that he was trying to figure out why he was coming there at night. That's what Rash testified to. Your intent, Officer Rash, was to identify him and find out why he was coming there late at night and then trespass him. Again, the state is putting in Mr. Arbery's intent through the officer, now trying to say, we're trying to actually figure out what his intent is there that night, making the intent issue relevant. And that Officer Rash took action throughout the entire neighborhood to find out why he was there, riding around, asking people, do you know why he's here? They asked the question about, do you know of his routine? That was objected to and sustained, so that's not evidence. They tendered the photograph of the sneakers, the top and bottom. So all of these things are getting into Mr. Arbery's intent, Your Honor. And it goes beyond where the court wanted us to be, but this is all through the action of the state. And so we would say now that his intent has been put in through their opening statement, as well as their law enforcement officers and some neighborhood witnesses. Notice we didn't ask any of our witnesses, did you see him, did you know him, does he run in the neighborhood? We didn't ask that, but they did. And so for that reason, it reopens the door. It opens the door for 404B, and we would ask you to revisit it because of those things.
And Your Honor, I would join in that motion for reconsideration as I joined in the original motion. And I will add this. I don't understand how the state can be pursuing a theory of aggravated assault that's based on the fear of Mr. Arbery, which is going to his mental state at the time that he's being chased, without opening the door to any facts or circumstances that inform his mental process there. And we can certainly take that up at charge conference. That's been noted to the court. But, I mean, if the state is pursuing an aggravated assault theory that is based solely on intent to injure, intent to assault, that's one thing. That's the mental state of the defendants in this case. If the state is pursuing an aggravated assault theory based on the reasonable fear of Mr. Arbery, then these other circumstances are certainly informing his decision as to what he's doing. And I think the court should require the state to make an election as to what theory they're proceeding under before the court ultimately rules on the 404B issue. Having said that, as I said, I've joined in the motion.
Anything from the state?
Yes, Judge, the state asks that you deny these 4 motions for reconsideration on all of these issues. All of this was known before we ever started. The mental health is totally irrelevant. 401, 403, they didn't know Mr. Arbery. 404B evidence on Mr. Arbery, they didn't know Mr. Arbery. So therefore, the same rulings and orders you've entered apply right now, despite all the evidence that has been put up. There is absolutely nothing about his mental health, given that Travis McMichael didn't know about it. But Travis McMichael took the stand and told the jury his perceptions and what he thought about Mr. Arbery. So that evidence, based on his perceptions, is before the jury. Probation with fight or flight. Actually, at the end of Mr. Travis McMichael's statement, it was fight or flight. He actually said that. I assumed the defense was going to ask him about that, and then they didn't. Blaming the state for cross-examining their client is a bit of a ludicrous argument, because the state's position is Travis McMichael is lying, not that it's incredulous about Mr. Arbery, that Mr. Arbery would do this, Mr. Arbery would do that. What's incredulous is the lies Travis McMichael is trying to tell this jury, all the stuff he's come up with. That was what the cross-examination was about. The use of force, he got up here and talked about his use of force. He explained it. He did the continuum. Mr. Rubin had him talking all about it. To say the state, once again, cross-examined about it, so now we've opened up the...
It was actually Mr. Sheffield. I wonder.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. It was Mr. Sheffield. But to blame the state and say, well, you cross-examined our client about what he's telling the jury about use of force, so we get to bolster his testimony now, we ask that you go ahead and deny that as well. And there is absolutely nothing that the state's done to talk about Mr. Arbery's intent. We talked about Officer Rash's intent as a law enforcement officer. That's what we talked about. The 911 call, they stipulated to the 911 call where Larry English goes, oh yeah, this is what he looks like out on the boat. And yet they're complaining. So, Your Honor, your orders that you entered on all 4 of these issues, your oral one on probation, we ask that you deny their motions for reconsideration based on the evidence that has been presented here. Thank you.
Any final word then, Ms. Hope?
Your Honor, I stand on what we said. It's not an issue of blame. It's an issue of what proof came in that might inform the court in seeing this in a different light than you did before the evidence that you had an opportunity to see.
Before the court then, our motions for reconsideration on the 4 evidentiary issues that were brought up. There is an existing order on the, I'll just refer to them as the gateway records. I don't have it right in front of me. I forgot how that was couched in the order, whether that was the character. I think it was actually the state's motion in limine on character, which then resulted in a number of filings. That existing order has been in place. Considering the motion for reconsideration, the court is not going to allow those records to come in. The probation and use of force expert orders will be to come. Those are in the process of being drafted. Mr. Goff, they will probably not be in a form that will get them filed by tomorrow morning. But what I tried to do, and I do remember doing, at least on the probation order, was lay out where the court's opinion was based and how the court reached the conclusion that it did based upon the evidence presented at trial. The court's not going to reopen either of those 2 matters. And then, as with the first issue, there is a written order on the 404B evidence, which are the various things that Mr. Sheffield was just referencing. And again, the court on the motion for reconsideration relies upon that order and has considered the evidence referenced during trial and is not going to reopen that matter. So for the record, I think that should clear the record up. If there are matters that need to be placed into the record that have been referenced as being sealed into the record or need to get into the record, I'll keep the record open. I'll figure out the best time to do that until, which I understand then would be documentation that we have discussed before the court that just needs to be part of the file. I would imagine we'll keep that open probably through, I would imagine through closing, maybe to closing. What if that's a problem? Why don't everybody let me know what needs to come in and how long it's going to take to get it in? Maybe that's the better way to do that. I'll keep the record open. Okay.
And at the appropriate time, I did have a couple other things to add.
Let me make sure with the McMichaels.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not interrupting. I didn't know if you.
No, I was waiting on you all.
I do think, in order to perfect the record, certainly on the use of force expert and perhaps Dr. Kaufman, that we would like the opportunity to call Rick Register, who's a former ATF agent, FLETC instructor on use of force, to make the proffer. I think.
Did either one produce a report?
No. They didn't do a scientific examination, so there's no.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. But we do need to put in the record what he would have said had he been allowed to testify.
Okay. Well, let's figure out. When are they available?
I can inquire tonight and get back to the court, but I think Mr. Register is very flexible.
Dr. Kaufman's a different story. So I've checked in with her, but I'll speak with her to get back to the court as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't keep the record open forever.
No, we could do it this weekend or next week.
Anything then further from the McMichael defendants?
Yeah, no, we'll rest when the court brings the jury back.
All right. Mr. Goff.
Well, Your Honor, I'm so sorry. I think for the record, we actually need to hear from Greg McMichael personally, just to make sure it's on the record.
It's on the record. We don't need to hear from him.
And I guess I did hear from counsel for Travis McMichael, counsel for Greg McMichael. I understand you're adopting I think it had been placed in the record before, well, it would have been placed in the record before that Greg McMichael would be, I can't remember the language that was used, but effectively adopting the defense. But if there was anything else that may come up, then that would be presented. So what I understand is there's not going to be any additional evidence presented on behalf of Greg McMichael.
Well, what we anticipate you would do, Your Honors, when the Travis McMichael team rests, you would call on us, and then we would make our announcement.
Yeah, and that's just I'm trying to make sure I understand what we're
Right.
Yeah. And so then Greg McMichael will rest, as I understand it, and then it'll be to Mr. Bryant.
I'm so sorry, Your Honor, not to be really, really picky, but being an appellate, at this juncture in time, Greg McMichael has not stated on the record whether he's going to testify or not. And he has not put his decision on the record. So if the McMichaels rest, the problem is a clever appellate attorney is going to come behind and go, Mr. Greg McMichael never was given that. I'm just...
And that's fair, because as I indicated, I'm usually used to defendants in the discussion with the court on testifying saying whether they have or haven't. And actually, in this case, he hasn't said whether he intends to testify. It's my understanding that Mr. McMichael does not intend to testify and intends to rest.
Well, Your Honor, we'll announce that when you call on us to present our case, but yesterday, I believe it was, you made the full and proper inquiry about whether he understood his rights.
And I think we might be talking in circles at this point.
Yeah.
I think we're all in the same place. We just
I
need to
think
clear
we
it.
are.
Okay. Understanding how I think this is going to work, then we will get to Mr. Bryan's case in chief today. Okay. I'm sorry?
Shortly.
Yes. All right, let's take a 10-minute recess, and we'll go ahead and get the announcements on the record in just a moment. Mr. Goff.
Okay. I had something I wanted to bring up. I can do that after the recess.
We're all here.
Your Honor, I would note again, it was brought to my attention over the last break that we have a potpourri of political statements parading out in the foyer in front of this courtroom. And again, we don't understand how this First Amendment activity, which is prejudicial to our client's case, continues to happen inside the courthouse. I'm not picking on anybody, but it continues to take place. We had a huge protest. When I have access to a color printer, I'll print out some exhibits. We had a huge protest at lunchtime that was so loud with bullhorns, literally 20 feet from the front door of this courthouse, that you could hear what was being said at the doors of this courtroom within the facility. And again, that all goes back to our concern about the fair trial. But the most pressing concern I have is, because I can't read the minds of other counsel in this case, is my assumption is that there's one more witness yet to come, but based on the last couple witnesses, Your Honor, it's not for me to make an objection to character evidence presented against a co-defendant. That's an issue for other counsel to deal with if they think there is an issue. But I heard testimony today, for lack of a better characterization, as vigilante social media posts or communications involving co-defendants. And then, we have this after-the-fact conspiracy evidence coming out from the last witness, I believe that was Subi Lawrence, talking about her talking to the McMichael defendants, or one of the defendants, about the famous video in this case. I felt under 403 it was more prejudicial than probative in the case, but technically that evidence as presented didn't directly refer to my client, although you could put things together as to where this famous video is coming from. But we're right at the precipice of getting into and establishing or suggesting an after-the-fact conspiracy involving my client. And that's going to raise some serious severance concerns, because now my client is going to trial with two Dirty Harry style vigilantes, if I understand the import of these of the post, and we now have this after-the-fact conspiracy, which the state has cleverly found a way to get right up to the precipice without actually implicating my client in it. And again, that's going to put us in a severance posture. And if I'm right, the next witness that the McMichael defendants are calling, I suspect we're going to get into more of the same. And if, in fact, the state has intentions of going into any more after-the-fact conspiracy evidence or vigilante evidence in this case, then I think that the court should address what they intend to go into before they do it and not make me stand up and object in the presence of the jury. Because I'm just not as fluid as some of the other people in this case with these 803s and 403s, and heaven forbid I would make a speaking objection in front of the jury that the state might find objectionable or the court might find objectionable. So if the state intends to go down that path with the next witness, then I think we need to take that up outside the presence of the jury before their cross-examination.
If I knew who the next witness was, I might be able to address this.
I am not aware of the relief the defendant is seeking. That was a broad brush, Mr. Goff.
It was.
So I guess we are noting it for the record.
We are noting the severance issue for the record, and to be more specific, if the defense, I don't know what they're doing, but if the defense is going to call Diego Perez, who I had thought the state was calling, but they decided not to call. I had thought the defense was calling. Maybe they're not calling, but if they're going to put him up and the state's going to backdoor in vigilante issues involving the co-defendants or after-the-fact conspiracies, before the state does that on cross-examination, I think we need to take that up outside the presence of the jury.
Well, the court will take that matter. I think it's take the matter under advisement. Duly noted. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute recess.
seat, please.
All right, we're back on. Defendants present, represented by counsel. We are still with Travis McMichael. We ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Greg McMichael. We're
Yes,
ready.
Your Honor.
Mr. Bryan.
We are, but I would note for the record that my understanding is the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Has graced us with his presence in the public gallery this afternoon. The third. I'm sorry. The third. Martin Luther King the third. Martin Luther King the third. Yeah.
Apparently said somewhere, it does not look like he's in the gallery now, so that, I think the state's wanting. The state has its back to the public gallery, so I imagine they wouldn't know. But all right, thank you. Anything from the state then?
And I think just wanted to note that juror 12 was wide awake and paying lots and lots of attention this afternoon to the case.
Juror number 12 has been engaged, and I've been watching her. She has moved, it looks like permanently, closer to the bailiff on her own volition, and that seems to be working. All right, let's go get the panel.
All right for the jury. Seated.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to proceed with the case from Travis McMichael.
Your Honor, on behalf of Travis McMichael, we rest.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Greg McMichael.
Your Honor, on behalf of Greg McMichael, we rest.
On behalf of Mr. Bryan.
On behalf of Mr. Bryan, we've discussed this with the state. Rather than being compelled to republish the Night Owl porch video, still picture of Mr. Bryan's residence, republished the Night Owl 2 video with the trucks, and rather than publishing this excerpts from the state exhibits of investigator Officer Minshew and Detective Lowry, the state has agreed that we don't need to republish those today since we went through that yesterday. Reserve the right to do that during closing statements.
I'm sure that's been discussed with the state.
It has, Your Honor.
With that understanding, we rest.
Anything in rebuttal from the state?
No, Your Honor, nothing in rebuttal.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what that means is that all of the evidence that will be presented in this case has been presented. So let me tell you how we're going to proceed from here. There are matters that the court's going to need to address. That's going to take a little bit of time. We are going to go ahead and adjourn until Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Okay? So you are not going to be required to be in court tomorrow, but you are going to be required to be here at 9 o'clock Monday morning. Now, over this period of time, again, I'm going to repeat these instructions, which hopefully you're thinking about even in your sleep. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. Don't let anybody discuss the case with you. Don't go looking for any information about the case. If anybody is talking about the case in your presence of hearing, you need to walk away. And if anybody is approaching you about the case and wanting to talk to you or trying to talk to you about it, you need to make sure you walk away and contact the court so that we can get that matter addressed. Again, if you have social media, don't go looking at your social media accounts. Don't go picking up newspapers. Don't be flipping through stations and get caught on a station that's talking about the case. Don't do any of that. I understand I've said those instructions a number of times, and you've heard them before, and I see I've got a lot of nodding heads, so everybody understands the importance of those instructions. So again, we will reconvene Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I think the way we're moving right now, that will be for closing arguments or closing statements by counsel, and we'll proceed with the case at that time. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your attention here in the Superior Court of Glenn County, and we'll see you Monday morning at 9 o'clock. All right, thank you.
All right for the jury.
Let's go ahead and perfect the record. Any motions or other matters for the court with the evidence being in?
None from the state. I will go ahead and make sure all the evidence is organized and put appropriately together.
From Travis McMichael.
No, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we would just renew the motion for directed verdict of acquittal we made at the end of the state's case. Same arguments. I won't repeat any of them here, but I want to adopt all of them and apply them here at the end of the evidence.
If I remember correctly, that motion was made on behalf of both McMichael defendants.
Yeah,
so I understand it's being adopted by both McMichael defendants. Mr. Bryan. All right.
Your Honor, we renew our motion for directed verdict, and we also, I think, we joined in the McMichael motion, so we join in renewing theirs as well.
For the record, then, those motions having been made, the court denies those motions as presented, but they've been perfected from the record, or into the record. Anything from the state before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
From Travis McMichael?
No, Your Honor.
From Greg McMichael?
No, Your Honor.
From Mr. Bryan?
No, Your Honor.
Before we break, if you could give Sam a good email address so that we can forward to you the court's proposed charge, as I indicated that I would. So if you could do that before you leave, that would be appreciated. Let's plan on giving everybody an extra hour tomorrow morning to go and do whatever you want to do for an hour. So let's plan on 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we'll plan a charge conference at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. All right, thank you.